Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Office Talk. And today I really wanted to break down leasing for you. You see, I'm going to talk about leasing because in my experience as a real estate investor, I myself have implemented buy and hold strategies. This is the strategy that I have chosen. And when it comes to this strategy, leasing is often a huge factor. You see, leasing will help optimize your property's worth. It'll help keep the property profitable in the long term, and it'll save you a ton of headaches if done properly. So let's talk about leasing. Now, I hire a leasing agent to lease all my units just because leasing does take time out of your day. And depending where your property is located, for example, if it's located 45 minutes across town from your home or office, it might really eat into your day. And you'll have to go back and forth to the property multiple times. But if you're leasing your unit yourself or you're hiring a leasing agent, here are a few tips to help you maximize the visibility and get the proper tenant into your unit. So number one, I'm going to say, take professional photos. I hire a photographer to do all my photos of all the apartments that I'm renting or our team members renting. It's a small investment, $200, $250, but it'll really capture the space and really showcase the space and give it the professionalism that it deserves. Quality pictures attract quality tenants, believe it or not. Now, if you're doing it on your own and you have an up-to-date iPhone or Android phone, typically speaking, these phones have quality cameras involved and you could take good quality pictures. You don't always need to spend the budget on a photographer. However, if you're going to do the pictures yourself, keep in mind that you have to take into account a little bit of factors. You want to capture the full space at a wide lens. You want the space to look as big as possible. You need to have as much natural light in that space to give people a sense of the luminosity in the area. You'll also want to remove some clutter, maybe tidy up, really make the place presentable. Could you imagine asking top dollar for a unit that's a mess in the photos? It might not attract a large audience. Number two, I would market this unit on as many rental channels as you can. So the most common one is Facebook Marketplace, but then there's also things like Kijiji, apartments.com, rentals.ca, Zumper, PadMapper, and the list goes on and on and on of platforms that you could market your rental unit on. Having it on as many platforms as possible really maximizes your exposure. You want to make sure you get as many visit requests as you can and have access to as many qualified tenants as you can. Now, a common thing that I like to look out for, or I train my team members to look out for when it comes to tenants and their visits, is appointments. You see, if you give someone an appointment to come view an apartment at 1 o'clock and you show up and they're not there and they get there 45 minutes late or an hour late, this really shows, unfortunately, what type of character this person has. If they can't respect their visit times, they may have a problem when it comes time to paying the rent on the first of the month. If I'm renting an apartment and I give someone a visit at 1 o'clock, I want to make sure that they're there by 1 o'clock. If they show up at 1:30 or 1:45, chances are they might not be qualified for this unit. Now, with that being said, there are certain exceptions. For example, it has happened to me where my 1 o'clock appointment would call me 30 minutes before and tell me they'll be 20 to 30 minutes late. That shows accountability and responsibility. In this case, we make exceptions. Now, another point when it comes to leasing your apartment is you want to have a thorough application process. Oftentimes, this really weeds out the bad apples. So for example, that thorough application process might be something like sending them an email requesting that they fill out an application with all the standard information, personal information, information where they live, where they work, information on their 2 previous landlords. You want to have as much information on this applicant as possible. I also like to request a small monetary deposit for verification purposes only. On my applications, it's actually written The deposit is non-refundable if they're at fault for any non-payment of rent or if they choose an apartment over mine. The only time I refund the verification deposits is if I choose another applicant over theirs. You see, having a thorough application process and sending them an email with a detailed application and asking for a verification deposit might weed out the bad apples. Someone who sees that the property manager or the landlord is very thorough in the process might not apply for this apartment if they know they're a bad apple. Don't be fooled though. Some people might still try. This is why we ask for the verification deposit. Now we've done the visits, we've done the application, we're leasing the unit to our chosen candidate. This is your time to protect yourself during the lease. You see, I like to make my leases as packed as possible with rules, clauses, obligations. And generally speaking, I have 3 documents that are attached to my leases. I have the lease itself, I have the building rules and regulations, and I have a document for additional clauses. I'll give you a great example. In my rental units, we require that every candidate has tenant insurance. It's not an obligation though. If they don't get tenant insurance, that's fine. However, it's on our rules and regulations and it's written in the lease that the tenant opts to acquire tenant insurance. Now, let's say, for example, something happens due to tenant negligence. Generally speaking, the tenant insurance will protect the tenant. Great example is in one of my buildings, someone fell asleep while smoking a cigarette and the cigarette caught fire to a tablecloth and caused a small portion of damage worth $4,000 to my unit. That person had tenant insurance for civil liability, and that fell under their tenant insurance, which ultimately repaired the damage at no cost to me. However, if we take that same example and the tenant doesn't have tenant insurance, as long as they signed your building rules and regulations and your lease that clearly states they are required to accept tenant insurance, they become liable for the damage. So the lease signature is your time to fully protect yourself. If you're looking to get a little bit of insider scoop on the building rules and regulations that we use, drop a comment on this video. We'll have a member of our team reach out to you and send you an example of the product building rules and regulations that we use. But I highly suggest that when it comes time to leasing your unit, do not skip any steps and be as thorough as possible. This is your time to fully protect yourself when it comes to signing a lease. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope it gave you a real clear understanding on the do's and don'ts when it comes to leasing an apartment. I will see you guys on the next episode of Office Talk.